Hello, and welcome to a tutorial set this time, tailored for first-year students of AADA01 course in LTH, Lund University. My name is Gediminas Kirdekis, and I'm one of the teachers who will be running the course. So I guess let's begin with a bit of information. The course is aimed at giving you base knowledge of representation techniques, while also teaching you 3 programs from the Adobe package: Photoshop, Illustrator, and then InDesign. We will be doing a small project where everyone individually will take a hard surface item or object that you have either at home or at school, doesn't matter. And we will document it, meaning that we will take pictures of it, showcasing how the object actually transforms or moves. And we will take those pictures into Photoshop, and we will create some sort of a graphic representation of the dynamics of this object, right? So we'll make basically a collage of things. And then we will take those pictures again and move them into Illustrator to create some diagrams, so some stylized diagrams, right? So there's going to be like 2 different variations or versions of graphics that will come hand in hand later on, and that later on is going to happen in InDesign, the 3rd program, where we are going to take stuff from Photoshop that we did in Photoshop. We'll take stuff that we did in Illustrator, and we will merge all of it into a coherent single PDF document, and we will do that in InDesign. So basically, by the end of this course, you will have your first small portfolio entry, and yeah, hopefully it's going to be fun. So without any further ado, let's begin. And let's begin with the Photoshop part, because that's the first one. Actually, I lie. It's not going to be the first one. The first one is you taking pictures of some sort of an object, right? Something that you find at home or at school. And in my case, or for this tutorial, we chose a camera lens, right? So that by no means, you shouldn't do a camera lens, right? You can take, for instance, scissors. What's another good one? I keep forgetting the name of it in English. Like let's say lamp arm, the arm of a lamp that you have on the table that can move. You can take that. So there's plenty of objects in the wine bottle opener. Yeah, there's plenty of objects that you can take that have the possibility to be transformed, right? And camera lens is just one of them, right? So that doesn't mean that you also need to take a camera lens and to follow along with these tutorials. We will be much more general in the way we describe tools and things. So the pictures that I took, let me actually make them a bit bigger, like that. Yeah, so I just took the, God damn it, sorry, just some coffee. I took the pictures with this piece of paper, on white sheet of paper, the camera lens on it, just because my table is black and I don't want to deal with black material on black material later on in Photoshop if I want to cut out this item, right? So I just used this as a background. And they don't really need to be that, your studio setup for taking pictures doesn't need to be that involved. But you do need to think about, I definitely need to have high contrast on the edge to be able to cut it out later on without any problems. So that's a close-up of it. And that's a better version of it because I just increased the intensity of the light so it's less noisy. You can see with lower intensity, it's more noisy, less light intensity means more noise, more light intensity means less noise. So light is very important when taking pictures. Some other angle. Yeah, and this is what happens when I take a picture of the same lens, but I place it on a black background. The auto exposure of my camera just kind of creates this noisy mess, right? So that's not useful. So we have one more here. I'm just kind of going through them, and you can see I'm just removing the cap, for instance, showing that how it looks like without the cap. Expanding the lens, taking pictures of how it looks like when it's expanded. Taking pictures of the cap, which is apparently very dirty. I need to clean it. Taking pictures of the other side of the cap. I might need it, I might not. We will see. Taking pictures of the other side of the lens. And so on, right? So I'm just basically taking a bunch of pictures. Here I made a mistake because cutting this one out maybe it's not going to be that big of a problem, but I would prefer to have a white background for the whole lens. Yeah, this is a much better one. And then the top view of the lens. Some more. And that's it, right? So just a few pictures were taken. So basically, once you have taken these pictures, you will start with Photoshop, right? And this is where we start the first set of, the first tutorial, the Photoshop tutorial. So once you run Photoshop for the first time, or when you just open it up, it will give you this user interface, like this screen, where you have all of the recent files that you worked on. If you haven't worked with Photoshop before, then this is going to be an empty screen, I think. And then on the left-hand side, you will be able to create a new file or open an existing file, right? So for our purposes, I will create a new file, right? Create new. And here I have all of the different presets available, right? So those are pixels, like width and height of the file in pixels, and PPI is basically the resolution, the resolution of the file. So how many pixels are there in an inch in this case? So I will change these pixels, like on the right-hand side, I will customize my template, right? So I don't really know how many pixels I need, how many pixels I want, but I kind of know how many centimeters or millimeters I want. Because let's say that by the end of this course, you would, at some point in time later on, you would like to print out these files or these images at A3 or A4 format. Let's go for A3 format, right? So if you want to print something out at A3 format, in Photoshop and in Illustrator as well, and in InDesign, you need to specify that it's going to be that paper size, right? And if you don't know how big A3 page is, A3 sized page is, just Google it. But it's basically, I'll just turn this to millimeters here, and I will type in what I know. So the width is going to be 420 millimeters, and the height is going to be 297 millimeters. That's the size of an A3 paper. And then here you have the resolution of pixels per inch. So how many pixels are there per inch? A resolution of 72 is something that you use for, if you're not going to print it, if it's just going to be, on the web, on your computer, if it's going to stay digital, 72 pixels per inch is fine. It's good enough of a resolution. For instance, for Instagram, for Facebook, and so on, for like just sharing pictures, 72 pixels per inch is fine. I prefer, for printing, I prefer using 250 pixels per inch, which is still quite low, 250, which is still quite low resolution when it comes down to professional printing. But honestly, I really don't see a big difference between 250 and 300, and even higher than that. In my opinion, anything that is higher than 300 pixels per inch is unnecessary. You will not gain any additional resolution, any additional quality by increasing this number beyond 300 pixels per inch. There are certain cases with drawings, with line drawings, where you might want to have 600, but it's very, very niche. Those cases are very, very niche, very, very, like 1% of the time you need it. Usually you can get away with 250. If you really want to have high resolution for some reason, then you can go for 300. I'll keep it at 250. Then here you have color mode. It's either RGB color, grayscale, or SMIC color. There's also lab color, but let's not talk about it. Grayscale, RGB, or SMIC are basically three options. Grayscale it will make the file smaller, for sure, but it will also won't let you use colors, right? That's the problem. So it's going to be grayscale. The file is going to be either black or white or gray. RGB color is the mostly used one, and all of your screens, they use RGB to show you the color. So it's also most accurate. What you see on the screen is what you're going to get from the printer, right? RGB stands for red, green, blue, right? And basically it just mixes the proportion of these three colors, red, green, and blue, to produce any variety of colors that you need. And then you have SMIC color space, which is basically cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I don't know why K is for black. It should be SMIB, or maybe it's not black. No, it is black. But yeah, SMIC colors are used for used by printers. And basically, when you work with SMIC colors, you are saying that I don't care how it looks, how it's going to look like on the web page or on the internet. I only care that the colors are true to the SMIC colors that the printer will produce. It might be, different people might see different things about RGB versus SMIC, but my take on it is that these days, RGB conversion from RGB to SMIC is much more fluid and much more simple than conversion from SMIC to RGB. So it's much better to just work with RGB colors, with RGB color space, and later, if you need to, for some reason, convert the colors to SMIC. But honestly, in my experience, I maybe have done this once in last 10 years, right? So you don't really, and I don't think you will ever need to convert RGB to SMIC. So let's just stick to RGB colors. Then you have the bit depth. So what is that? I don't want to explain it. It's gonna take too long to explain it. It's basically 8-bit is I believe it's 16 million colors. 16-bit is same 16 million colors, only you also have additional information of color transparency. So your image can be transparent, for better or for worse. And 32-bit, I believe, is HDR. So every color also has brightness information attached to it. I might be very wrong about this. At least 8-bit and 16-bit, I'm pretty sure that I'm right. With 32-bit, it becomes weird. For us, we are working with 8-bit. We don't want to mess around with these at all. 8-bit is fine. Background contents is white. We don't care. Yeah, if we need to change the background, we will do that in Photoshop. And then you have color profiles and pixel aspect ratio. Just keep them as defaults, as they are. Don't mess with them. It's, you will mess them up really quickly if you start changing them. So that's what we have as a starting point, right? So once you've done that, just click create and you will have your file loaded in. So let's talk about user interface and what you see here on the screen. In the top, you see file, edit, image, blah, 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 all of these tabs, menu items, So if we look at the file, you have the, regular things that you would see in any program. Create a new file, open an existing one, close the file, and then save the file, and so on, right? And then the exit program as well, but who uses that? You just have the X button right here in the top right corner. Then you have edit, image, and so on. So if we need something here, something from here, I will specifically tell you where to find it. But usually most of the stuff is done either through shortcuts or is found here. But it's way too many things to kind of cover one by one. So things that are actually useful, I will talk about them during the tutorial. One thing to note is window, right? Window tab here. So if there's something on your screen that you don't see, that I have and you don't have, then make sure that the tick marks are set to be color is tick marked, layers is tick marked, and navigator is tick marked. It's basically, these are different not options, but these are different windows of tools that you might need in Photoshop, right? That you might need as a separate tool set located somewhere in Photoshop. So for instance, what would be a good one to show you? Let's say patterns. I don't know. Let's say patterns. If I tick mark this, suddenly bam, patterns appears here, and I can even take it and drag it out as a separate window. I can drag it around. I can dock it to, let's say, here, and thus I have my patterns, and I have my water patterns, grass, trees, blah, blah, blah. I never use patterns, so I don't care. I will just close it. Right? Which means that on the right-hand side, we have different tabs for different parts of the windows, right? We have the navigator in the histogram. So navigator is basically, let me just make a X shape, right? Navigator is just basically a smaller version of, the navigator will always show you the full page, right? And it will show you where you have zoomed in on that full page. So that's the navigator, right? And as you click this button right here, I don't know how to call it, small mountains button right here, it zooms out. If you click the big mountains button, it zooms in. You can also zoom in or zoom out with holding down the Alt key on your keyboard and scrolling the wheel, the mouse wheel. You can zoom in, zoom out. So those are two ways. Then you have color, swatches, gradients, right? So here you can just choose a color, and any color that you want. For instance, let's say blue, and then just kind of draw with blue. You can go for red, draw with red. By the way, if you can't draw, the shortcut for it is B, short for brush, but you can also just click on this this tool right here, which is the brush tool, and then you can draw. But we'll cover the brush tool in just a bit. Oh, it's an ugly boy, so let me see. Oh, even worse. Let me just make it white again. Okay. So that's that. And then basically you have swatches, you have gradients, but I never use these. I don't imagine you will need to use these as well. A very important thing is the layers here on the right hand side. This is basically, think of it this way. You have sheets of paper like the calc, the calc paper. How is that called in English? Tracing paper. You have sheets of tracing paper that's perfectly transparent. And you kind of put them one on top of each other and you draw on each of these like sheets of paper, right? So those are layers. So for instance, I can, let me just unlock this. I can create a new layer here in the bottom left. If you hover your mouse over different tools, it will say what the tools do. So I can create a new layer. So you can see here, I have layer 0 and layer 1. Or you might see background instead of layer 0, that's fine as well. So I have layer 1, which is located on top, and I can draw something on it. Let's make the brush a bit bigger. There we go. So I draw something on top of it, right? And then I can create one more layer, layer 2, and let's make it blue, and I'll draw like that as well, right? So now I have one layer that has the blue scribble and another layer that has the red scribble, meaning that I can just mess around with them, right? For instance, I want the blue layer actually to be behind the red layer. So what I do is I take it and I drag it, I click and drag it, and I drag it below layer 1. And now the red layer is in front, right? So layers are very cool, and we will be covering quite a few things about them. Let me delete, and let me delete that layer as well. So the trash bin, as you select the layer, the trash bin deletes the layer. For now, I'll just have it as layer 0, or in your case, again, it might be the background layer. Okay. Left-hand side is where your like basic tools are. So you have your movement, you have your rectangular marquee tool, and so on. All of these tools I will show you. Just wait. And here, where I have the red, the blue, and the red color, you will probably have white and black color. These are like two active colors that you use. So you can only use two colors at once, right? But for instance, if you want to change one of them, you just click that color, right? And then you can kind of go for, let's say, pink. So blue becomes pink. And then let me change the red color to green, right? So red becomes green. And as we use, let's say, the brush tool, so I'll click on the brush tool again. As we use the brush tool, I can draw in pink. And then if I want to switch to green, I need to click that small, those small arrows there, like the L-shaped arrows right next to pink and green. I need to click them and it will switch them around. And now, since green is in the front, green is my active color, and I can continue brushing with the green color, right? So pink, green, and so on, right? So that's that. Then you have masks and so on, but I will not be covering masks. That's unnecessary for beginners. Right. Actually, let's start doing it, right? Let's start actually creating the project, because this is just kind of boring just to kind of do it with base colors. So, oh, sorry, one more thing before we actually start. It's this, you can see here, this tab which says Untitled 1, blah, 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 25.3%, layer 0, RGB 8. So this is, Untitled 1 is your file name. 25.3% is how much you are zoomed out or zoomed into the file. So it actually says here 25.25% of zoom, but this is how close you are actually to the, how close you are to the screen with the file. Then you have layer 0, so what's your active layer? And you have RGB 8, this is your basically information about your color. You don't care about that last part. So let's actually name our file. So I'll go to File, and to name it, you need to save it, right? It's not saved yet. So I'll click on File, and I'll choose Save As. Save as something, right? Save as. And I'll just save it to my desktop, but you can choose whichever place you want. And for file name, I will just give it AADA01 Photoshop or something like that. Name it any way we want, right? And that's it. You just then click save. You don't care about anything else. Hit save. Maximize compatibility. I don't know. Don't show me this again. Hit OK. Don't care. So now it's saved, and you can see that now the file name is changed to AADA01 Photoshop.psd file. Okay. So we have that going on. Now let's do our project. So we have our photos here, AADA01 photos, right? And I want to open them in Photoshop. So there are different ways of how I can do it. So let me show you the fastest one. If I'll just take the first photo. If I just take the first photo and just drag it into my Photoshop file, it just, kind of appears there, right? And it creates a new layer for it. And the layer name is the file name of my photo. And it has this X on it. X means that it's still waiting for you to give it some sort of information about movement, for instance. So I can click and drag on it and I can move it around. It also asks what kind of size you want this to be. So I can scale it down or scale it up. And it also asks for rotation. So if I move my mouse away from the image like that, and I rotate it, away from the image, I click and drag, then I can rotate it. I believe if I hold down the Shift key, if I hold down the Shift key, it's going to lock the rotation to increments of 5 degrees. So that's the Shift key on the keyboard. Okay. But for this one, I don't need to do anything, so I'll just hit Enter. Once you're done placing it, you just hit Enter, and it's placed. So this is the first way of how to get images into your Photoshop file. Another way is, and actually, before we kind of continue on, this way of doing it is not that great. Well, it's fine. It has its benefits and its drawbacks. The drawback is that this guy imports as a smart object, which I personally really dislike, this smart object type of a thing. I understand that it's kind of useful for high-end professionals to have objects as smart objects, and I won't even explain what smart object is, but basically for you as beginners and for you as for first at least few projects, as you're just getting the hang of Photoshop, just convert as you import it. Just import the file. Just convert it to a regular layer. So how do you do that? You can do that by right-clicking on the preview of the layer, right here, where I have my mouse. Hello, yes. Right-click. No, not on the preview, my bad, on the name of the layer. You right-click on the name of the layer, and you choose Rasterize Layer. Rasterize Layer option. And now it's not a smart object anymore. Yeah, that's about it. Then I can drag it around. I will show you how to, or actually I can show you how to move it right now. It's this button right here, Move Tool, V. Right. By the way, when you hover your mouse over tools, they kind of show you what the tools do, which is nice. Okay, so you can drag around, drag your image around. So that's first way of how to do it. Second way is, let me grab another image. You drag it again onto Photoshop, but this time around you don't drag it onto the file or the screen of, within Photoshop, but rather you drag it onto this like row or onto this ribbon at the top where you already have one file here. You drag it next to it like that. And what this is going to do, it's going to open up this image in Photoshop, right? So now I have this image right here and my working file here, right? So I have two files. Let me zoom out from it a bit. So this is quite useful if you first need to work on the image. For instance, if I were to brighten it, oh, that's not brightening. If I want to brighten it or something like that, like separately, and then you kind of will copy it in. So how to copy it in, right? Into your working file. You do Control A, or Command A if you're a Mac user, selects everything in the file on which you're working on, right? Alternative to Control A, let me say, alternative to Control A is this rectangular marquee tool, and you just drag from the left-hand side to the right, from left top to bottom right, and you mark everything in that way as well. To unmark something, you do Control D, deselect, right? Control D. So write these things down. I suggest writing them down on a piece of paper until it becomes muscle memory. So again, Control A, select, Control D, deselect. So I will do Control A, so I have everything selected, or Command A. So every time when I say Control for Mac users, it's going to be Command button. So I now have everything selected. I will type in, not type in, but use Control C to copy. And I'll go to my to my, like the main work file, and I will press Control V to paste, right? And now this this image, it has been pasted into my work file as a separate layer. So I have one layer here, and I have the second layer in the bottom. So let me drag the first image that we got into our work file on top of this second image, like that. So again, I go to layers and I just drag them on top, like so. Right, so now it's on the top. Okay, so that's another way of how to do it. There is like a third way where you go to File, Open, and you find it. I don't know where it is. Is it in Desktop? Yes, Desktop, and you just kind of select the file and you just hit Open, and it opens up the file. But dragging and dropping for me is easier, right? Okay, So let's say we have our images here that we want to work with. And actually, these are not the images that I want to work on, right? So I will delete both of the layers, and I will find amongst all of these images the one that's going to be like the base image, right? The best image out there. And I think we can use this one. Let me just see real quick. Enter. It's a little bit out of focus. Oh, but this is not. Yeah, this is quite good quality, I think. Yeah, this is good enough. So we will be using this image as our, we will build everything around this image. So again, I'll take it and I'll just drag it onto this ribbon thing, like right next to the original file, like that. And I will Control A, Control C, go to my working file, Control V, right? So my image is now located here. It's too big, right? It's right now it's too big, so we need to scale it down. But I don't have any options right now. I don't have any options on how to scale it down. So the way you do it is with Control T. T as in tree, as in teacup, T. Control T will give you this frame, right, around the image. And then you can click and drag one of the corners of the image, and it's going to kind of scale it down or scale it up. If, I believe it's this one. Wait, let me just check. No, it's not this one. Wait, just give me a second. Is it this one? Yeah. If when you drag, it does this, right? It doesn't keep the proportion. Then make sure that here in the top where you have, so these are all of the settings for transformation. When you run the Control T tool or command, these settings appear, and these are all of the settings for transformation. So if it doesn't retain proportion as you scale it up or down by dragging, make sure that you click this chain and that this chain is enabled, right? Maintain aspect ratio. If you click this, whoops, well, now I messed it up. But basically, before you do the transforms, if you click this, it will retain the proportion. It's not a problem if we have this messed up right now. I will just unclick it, and here I have percentage in for the width and the height, right, of the original image, of how small it got. So I can see that the height is only 16.33%, while the width is 67.02%. So if I want to kind of keep the original proportion, I just need these two numbers to match. So I'll just type in 50 for the width and 50 for the height, right? So now both of these numbers match, and then when I see that they match, I can enable that chain between them so that they are now linked. And now, it's going to kind of, we have saved the proportion. Okay. So enough of that. Let me scale it up until something like this. I think that's fine. It's fine if, the image is out of bounds. We don't care about, my table, or all we care about is the camera. So I think that's, the size of it is fine now. And to finalize the transformation, I will just hit the Enter button. Enter. Finalizes the transformation, and we are good to go. Okay. So let's see what we can do with it, right? What we can do with this image. Well, first of all, Actually, no, not first of all. I want to cut it out, right? I want to cut out this camera, and I want to have a different background. There are different ways of how to do it. If you have a green screen, it's quite easy because then you can use green screen. Do you know what? Let me just show you. Green screen, right? If you have something like this, if you have a background that's very, very, intense color, and your object doesn't have that color, then you can cut out stuff from it with a tool that's under Select, in the top, under Select, Color Range. So with Color Range tool, you can select everything that is green and you can cut it out. So let me show you. Select Color Range, and this time I will, you will see this image here, and this time around I will just say, well, give me everything that's like the color of the paper, right? And it kind of gives me, it says, oh, I'm going to select all of this, right? All of this stuff in the preview. Okay, but I also want you to select, the bottom left corner, and here it doesn't show that it's going to select it. That's because, there's a big difference between this color and this color. So I can use the Shift key and click on the bottom left, and then it's going to select the bottom left area as well. And then I can control the fuzziness to kind of specify that the camera shouldn't be selected. Let's see if that's gonna help. Yeah, and let's try. So I'll hit OK. So you can see that this marking indication has been made, that this stuff is selected. And then to test it out, I can hit the delete button. Delete. Right? And remember, to deselect stuff, you do Ctrl D. And now, even though this is, it looks like there's something still there, this is actually completely transparent. If I were to go to layer 0, so I'm switching here on the right-hand side, I'm switching from layer 1 to layer 0. If I were to go to layer 0, and I chose pink color, and I turn on the brush, I can draw behind it, right? Like so. Okay, so as you can see, as you can probably tell by now, color range is not that great in this particular case, because it also, these letters, for instance, also had the same color as the background. And also here, these letters as well. That's not good, right? That means we are losing information. So I can't use color range. I need to use something else. Let me undo, and you can undo by using Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z, Ctrl Z. Undo, undo, undo. You can also go to Edit, Undo, but Ctrl Z is faster. Or Command Z, I guess, if you're a Mac user. So another way of how to do it is with a polygon lasso tool. So I showed you the move tool. I showed you the rectangular marquee tool. The third one is polygonal lasso tool. So the way it works is, well, actually, if you click and hold, there's the lasso tool, polygonal lasso tool, and magnetic lasso tool. And these three are different tools that you can choose from, right? If you just click and hold the original icon. So I personally prefer using polygonal lasso tool, and that's why I am going to show you it. Lasso tool is used with graphics tablets, so it's not really useful if you're using a mouse. And magnetic lasso tool basically tries to guess what you're trying to cut out. So I don't like when computer is guessing what I'm trying to do. So I just use polygonal lasso tool. Okay, so I choose that. And then always make sure that you're in the correct layer, layer 1, like that. And you zoom in, and here I already can see that it's going to be a little bit of a problem due to the blurriness of the image, while here it's going to be kind of okay. But I will just go to town, add it. So with polygon lasso tool in the correct layer set, I will start drawing, like click, 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 click. I will start clicking around my camera lens and basically cutting it out manually. And this is something that, this is something that you do all the time as a professional. Doesn't matter how good you are at either Photoshop or whatever. It's something that is just something that you can't run away from. With cameras, it's fine because there's a lot of straight angles and so on. But with people and so on, or even like animals, it's not fun. Definitely not fun. But not everything that's important is fun, and this is important work. So I'm just kind of dragging around as I move my mouse closer to the end to the edge of a screen. It's going to move the screen, which is nice. And I'm basically, notice how I haven't finished cutting out the camera. That's because I like to do it in steps, right? In parts. So I'm just kind of marking out an area, and now I found where I started. And as I hover next to my starting point, there's a small circle that's going to appear near your cursor. And then you click it, and then it kind of finishes up the loop and says that, yo, I have marked out this area right here for you. And then you just say, great, delete, right? And then Control D to deselect, right? So we have cut out this part for now. Actually, I don't like that sharp edge there. I will, come on. Just get rid of it. Just make it a little bit softer. Okay, so we have that. And we kind of continue. So this is gonna be fun. I'm just kind of guessing. I don't want to be super precise with this. It will probably not even show up. But also I don't want to be very clunky about this as well. So that's fun. Unfortunately, I don't think you can. As you're using the polygonal lasso tool, you can't zoom in or zoom out from the screen, so that's shitty. But you can close the lasso tool automatically. For instance, I don't need to hover here. I can just double click with my mouse, and it will close it with a straight line segment, which is nice. And then I can zoom out. Again, Alt and scroll wheel. I can hit delete and Control D to deselect. Actually, let me cut it out with this level of zoom. Because I am lazy. And I also, actually, because I don't want this tutorial to be 5 hours long. So that, and that's kind of good enough. That. Do we need a shadow? Yeah, I'll have a shadow. I'll make a shadow, sure. So I'm taking in the shadow as well into my as an addition to my camera. Okay. So that's that. Like that. Like that. And then let's close it or finish it up here. There we go. And I'll just kind of you know, do this. There we go. Delete. That's done. That looks very ugly, but what can you do? Let me just delete that spike, at least. So we have that, right? There's still a bunch of junk around the camera, but I can just kind of get rid of it right now very quickly by just dragging around it, hitting delete, dragging around it like that, hitting delete. That's it. Control D to deselect. So we have our camera now. That's cool, and we can move it. Oh, there's still crap there. That's fine. We will let's do one trick that I really like doing. Once you have your camera kind of cut out, then I prefer to either use polygonal lasso tool or rectangular marquee tool, doesn't matter, but kind of select the camera like that. Control X to cut. So Control C copies while Control X cuts, and Control V to paste. So basically I just cut paste. And what it does, it just takes that camera and places it into a separate layer. So now layer 1, even though it has some dirty stuff around the screen where we can't really see it, I can just get rid of it, right? By just selecting the layer 1 and hitting delete, not the delete key, but the trash bin icon here, hitting that, choosing yes to delete the layer, and that's it. So now we have cleaned this up. I want to separate the camera from the shadow as well. So what I'm going to do is in layer 2, make sure that you are always make sure that you're in the correct layer. In layer 2, I will kind of go around the camera here, just like that, just like that. Okay, I have no idea if that's the correct place for it, but we'll see. Really hard to tell what I'm cutting here. That's the problem with, you know, dark on dark cuts. Then we have the sigma. Okay. Yeah, good enough. Kind of missed a part, but that's fine. All right. So we have that. Close it up. So now virtually in this whole area, I have selected the shadow, right? So I can Control X to cut it and Control V to paste it. And it's pasted in the wrong position, but that's fine. So now I can take the shadow, right? So I have layer 3 for my shadow, and I take the move button here, move tool here, and I can move it back into the correct position, and hopefully it's going to snap in place. It's not snapping, so I need to zoom in a bit more. So, and to kind of, there we go. Snap it back in place. Good enough, right? So why did I do this? I did this because now I can control the shadow separately from my camera. And this will be useful later on. Let's add, so for this particular tutorial, I will not do everything, right? Because that would take too long. You know, just to kind of explain every single step that I do and also do the whole project. You on your own will need to do the full extent, right, of the project any way you think is nice. You can stylize it and so on. I'm just going to show you the basics, right? The basics, the building blocks on how to do it. So let's look at what kind of other pictures we have. So we have a camera that's opened, we have a camera that's extended. That's perfect. And it's kind of similar angle. It has a similar angle. So I'm going to drag it in to my window here. And I will just select around it like so. just like that, copy it, and paste it here, right? Like so. Control T, and transform it to make it a bit smaller. Hard to tell what kind of actual size I need, but that's good enough. Right, so now this guy right here. Let us see. For this one, I will use magnetic snap tool to just show you how that works, or magnetic lasso tool. So again, where we have polygon lasso tool, if I click on magnetic lasso tool here, then I can click and drag, and as I drag, it tries to guess which edge am I trying to select. Which edge am I trying to select? And it's kind of doing, apparently it's doing a pretty good job as long as I have my mouse steady. Oh no. Oh no. There we go. It's messing up. So that's bad. Okay, so let me just do it this way. Like that, right? So it kind of guessed well in this area, but it stopped guessing well at all in this area. So I still want to kind of delete that part, right? But I don't want to delete this part. So what I can do to fix this, I will turn on polygon while I still have this selected. I will turn on polygon lasso tool, and then I will hold the, I will zoom in here, like that. And I will hold the shift key. Shift will add my new selection to the existing one, right? So I will hold the shift key and I will just kind of, I will just add a little bit of a selection here. So you don't need to hold it all the way through. You can just, you need to hold it before the first click, right? So I hold it before the first click and then I release it, right? And I just kind of drag around and just kind of adds that selection there to the existing one. So now I have my camera with some extra shit selected, right? If I hit the delete button, it's going to delete the camera and not the stuff that I actually want to delete, right? So that's not good. Control Z to undo. So I need to somehow invert the selection, right? And the way you do it is you go to the select tab. Well, it's Control I think. No, Control I inverts the color. Control Shift I. Yeah. So it's either Control Shift I, or you go to Select Inverse. Control Shift I. So now everything that, the selection got inversed, and now when I hit the delete button, it deletes everything except the camera and some stuff that I left out. Okay, let us continue. So now I will use my trusted polygon lasso tool. Actually, do I even need that part? No, I don't need that part because I can reuse that part from there. Okay, sure. Let me just be a bit obnoxious about it and just do something like this. The reason why I do this is because I will be reusing parts from... What the hell is going on there? Let's clean it up a bit. I will be reusing parts from my first picture for my second picture, so I don't care about the what happens here. Okay, so I have two cameras now, and there's some junk here. So again, I will use that cleanup method that I already talked about, where I select the whole camera, Control X, Control V, and then now that camera is separated from all of the junk. So I select the layer with all of the junk and I just delete it. There we go. So now we have it going on here. All right. So we have the camera here, we have its shadow, and we have the extended camera here. First thing is I need to somehow match these two cameras together. So the angle of these two cameras needs to match. The way I do it is I will be, first of all, rotating and scaling this camera to fit. Control T to rotate or to, to transform. And I just rotate it, kind of position it in this way. And you can see that it's pretty hard to tell, if this is fine, if I should scale it more or less, and so on. We need this guy to be a little bit more transparent. And the way we do it is we change the opacity. Opacity is basically transparency. We change the opacity of this, of our current camera layer. So as I decrease the opacity, you can see that, well, right now it's 100%, and as I decrease it, it becomes more and more transparent. So I will just choose something like 50%. That's somewhere around 50%. That's fine. Okay, so that's opacity. And then I can position it much more, much better, right? And kind of work with the scale much more. Okay, so let's see. Something like that should do the trick. Something like this. Yeah, that seems good, right? Seems like it's aligned. So I will just hit enter and kind of I have my camera. So this is the reason why I didn't care about what happens. Let me actually turn back the opacity to 100. This is why I didn't care what happens with that part. It's because I will be reusing the body of this picture with the extension of this picture, right? Like that. So now let's start doing some funky stuff. First of all, I can see that this camera doesn't fit anymore, so I need to fix that. And the way I'll fix that is holding down the Shift key, or Control key rather, I will select all three layers that I have here, except the background one. And then I will do Control T to transform all three of these layers at the same time so that I can rotate all of them together. Like that. Right? I'll hit enter. And then I will come back to selecting just one camera layer 5 in this case. I'll zoom into it and I'll see what I can do to make it look like, this is the resting position, let's say position A, and this is position B. So how do I show that this extends? Also, I'll need to fix the color. This is too yellow according to that, but that's easy. That's layer. So now let's see. I need to cut around here, around this edge right here. All right? So how do we cut? Let's go for lower opacity a bit. And simply, there's no fast way of doing it. We just cut. Like that, that. I guess that's the line. It's hard to say. There's a lot of guesswork involved with these kind of things. That's the line, that's the line. And then let's say it just kind of tapers off there. Okay, and then we need to do like a walk back here and finish it up here. Okay, so with the correct layer selected, I will hit the delete button and it gets cut. And then it's much easier for me to select everything else and kind of delete the unnecessary bits like that. Okay, let's turn this back on to 100%. Let's just see how this looks. Looks good. you know, the perspective could be better, but it's not that big of a deal. Here something's wrong. Oh, here it's the camera lens that's sticking out, but that's fine. So we don't need this part. Let me just cut that away, like that. It's just going to look more natural this way. So this is compressed. This is extended, right? And I can even do something funky, like even more funky with it. I can take this lens now, and I did it. Sorry, muscle memory. I can take that layer of extension of this layer 5. Actually, let me call it. So I will double click on the layer name and call it extension. I will take the shadow layer and call it shadow. And I'll take the base layer and call it body. Okay. So extension layer, I select it and I drag it onto the new layer button, which is right here, right? So if I drag it onto the new layer button, it's gonna make a copy of my extension layer, right? And I can say extension midway. I don't know, I just call it that, extension midway, right? And I can then take the move tool and kind of drag it back and align it properly so that it looks like it's extending midway through, right? And now I need to make the cut again. So let me turn down the opacity, all of that jazz. Select. Wait, is the extension correct? No, this needs to be scaled down as well. So Control T, because here you can see that due to perspective, it's a bit too big, right? So I just scale it down a notch, like that. Okay, that's now that's going to be good. And lasso tool. I'll be fast with this one. Just not accurate at all, but whatever. Okay, delete. Oh crap, yeah, so this is why you need to always check which layer you're at. So I deleted the stuff from the wrong layer. So Control Z again, right? Because I deleted stuff from extension, oops. I deleted stuff from extension layer, but I want to delete stuff from extension midway layer, from this one right here, just like that. Okay, now it's fine. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have that. We have this, and we have this, right? So let's make it ghostly, so to say. Because I don't want these two layers to have full opacity. So let's say extension midway through should have around maybe 33% opacity. 33 seems to be not a lot. We'll see. Let's try 33%. And then for the extension layer, the full extension, let's say 50%. Maybe 33 as well. Yeah, something like that, right? So we have 33 and 33 here and 33 here. So we have that kind of a information about that, yo, this camera extends, right? There's one more thing. This becomes too dark and too cluttered, and I don't really want to have any sharp cutouts happening where these two things meet. So what I'm going to use is a new tool, and it's going to be the eraser tool, which is this guy right here, eraser tool. And the way eraser tool works is exactly the same way as the brush tool. Here, once you select the eraser tool, here in the top you have the options, right, for it. So in general, if you click this small arrow right next to the shape of the tool, it will give you the size and the hardness. And 99% of the time, that's what I work with. The size of the eraser tool and the hardness. So here I can see that the size is pretty small on the screen. So I'll increase the size. And that's a bit too big. So let's say 1,000. Yeah, that's good enough. And then the hardness, if it's 100%, it has a very sharp edge. If it's 0%, it has a fuzzy edge, right? So I want this to be soft eraser, so I'll have a fuzzy edge. Okay, so that's that. That's our eraser. And I can kind of delete stuff with it now. Let me actually show you on the body of this camera, right? I can delete stuff with a very fuzzy eraser. But I don't want to delete the body. I want to delete the extension and the midway extension with it. But also, I don't want to delete it all the way through, right? I don't want to erase all the way through it. I want to erase in increments, right? So I don't want it to be full on full blast, so to say. So to change it, I can change the opacity of the brush, of the eraser, right? So if I change the opacity to, let's go for 50%, and actually I can show it with the body again, then it doesn't delete it all the way through. But we will be doing it on the extension. And this is going to be very minuscule effect, but I think this is important to do. So I'm going to brush a little bit here so that the lens here kind of shows up better. And also I'll go to extension midway and brush a bit more here. So see how the lens, the closed lens starts popping more? That's because I'm removing a little bit of those pixels. And in doing so, now I can come back to extension layer and increase it to maybe 50%. And extension midway layer, I can increase it to 50% as well, right? Just because I removed some meat, let's say, from the actual sigma, for the actual cap, the closed layer. Shadow doesn't really make sense anymore, does it? Well, let's kind of invent it. Let's mess around with the shadow, and then we will do some final adjustments to this, and I will call it a day with this tutorial in particular. So for the shadow, how do we do this? Maybe we just kind of select a part of the shadow here and Control X, Control V, so cut it and paste, and kind of paste it. Oops, that's the wrong one. Where is my shadow layer? There it is, layer 1. Okay, and come on, just give me that layer. There we go. And can I just move it here? Yeah, I can, but it doesn't look natural, does it? Okay, let's get rid of the shadow. So executive decisions to get rid of the shadow here, but we do still need something for this thing to look at least a little bit, not necessarily natural, but we want something below the camera. So we need to create our own shadow. And do we do it now or later? Let's first fix the colors. Yeah, I think fixing colors and fixing brightness, contrast is more important. So the first thing that I'm going to do in fixing the colors is going to be, like working with this. This is a little bit too yellow. just a tiny bit too yellow, and also I think it's a little bit too dark, but we will see. So all color adjustments and so on are under image adjustments right here, image adjustments. So you have brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, blah, 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 blah. You have a lot of them. The ones that we will be using this time, because I don't have the time to cover all of them, you'll do that on your own time. The ones that we'll be using is levels and hue saturation and desaturate, right? So I'll be showing 3 out of all of these, because those are in my opinion, the most useful ones. So levels, or the shortcut for it is Ctrl L. Levels will give you this menu box here, where you can change how dark the dark pixels get, how bright the bright pixels get. You can make, like, you can change the gamma of your image as well. So let me go through this real quick, right? The mountains that you see here are basically the distribution of pixels in your scene, right? Rather in your layer. So this is, when I see a mountain like this, it tells me that there's a lot of pixels, like a large portion, or almost the whole portion of my camera is dark, right? Because it's closer to the left-hand side is the dark pixels, the right-hand side is the bright pixels. So most of the image is on the dark side, right? And it's towards the dark, even from the midpoint, right? So I need to correct it a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. So I can do it by by saying that the brightest pixels shouldn't be here, but rather I click it and drag it. They should rather be, let's say, somewhere here, right? And you can see as I move my the slider right here, the image becomes brighter, right? And I can over brighten it as well, but we don't want to overkill it. The way I do this, like my thought process is, I will move this, sorry, I will move the slider until I see that the midpoint between dark and white hits the base of the first hill, right? In your case, it might be something completely different, and it's basically trial and error until you kind of get how this thing works. So I just moved the bright pixels to the left, and then I will deal with the mid pixels here, mid colors, mid brightness pixels. What's the word? Midtones. Yeah, midtones. I will deal with the midtones here. So I will move them to the left as well. And you can see as I move them, to the left, the whole camera becomes brighter. As I move them to the right, the whole camera becomes darker. But there are still parts where it's never going to become black, right? That's because this movement of this element right here prevents it. So let me just brighten it just a tiny bit, like so. And maybe just a tiny smudge, introduce a bit more contrast. And I usually never mess around with these, because this is just basically like make it a little bit more dull towards the dark, or make it a little bit more dull towards the bright. I don't need that. So that's all you need to do. You have 3 levers to push, and you just mess around with them. Okay, so we have brightness contrast set up for this guy. And now let's work with the colors of it. So honestly, I would just like I would just desaturate it because my camera, well, it does have that red button there, but besides that red button, it doesn't really have anything like color wise. So I would just go to adjustments and choose desaturate. And you can see what desaturate does exactly, right? It becomes black and white. But having it black and white is actually kind of boring, I think. It's nice to have it with some colors. So I'll Control Z, to undo, and I'll show you two ways of how to do it. First one is if you go to adjustments and you go to hue saturation. So I'll actually show you hue saturation and color balance. If you go to hue saturation here, you can first of all change the hue, so you can remap the colors to any color you want, right? That's pretty cool, huh? So let's say I want this to be this color, right? You can also change the saturation, so you can make it more intense, or you can make it completely discolored. And you can change the lightness, right? So you can make it brighter, darker. We don't mess around with lightness here. It's just saturation and hue. So let's say, first, I usually just amp up the saturation and I mess around with the hue until I find a color that I enjoy. So in this case, it's going to be... Actually, I do like this green. It's kind of nice. So I'll have it. And now I'll bump down the saturation until I'll see that, it's reasonable. So let's say minus 50, something like that. Yeah, sure, minus 50 seems to be okay. Something like this. Okay, so we have that going on. Now, I will do kind of the same. Oh, wait, sorry, forgot. I promised that I will show you the image adjustments color balance thing, right? So color balance is something a little bit different from hue saturation. It still remaps the colors, but it remaps them according to brightness of the pixels. So tone balance here, it is set to midtones, but let's say I choose highlights, right? And I will bump them up to, wait, why does it do that? Shadows. Yeah, it kind of works, but it's not midtones. Sorry, just give me a second. Apparently I'm struggling with this one. Okay, let's try it with much smaller values. Usually for color balance, you use it to make the shadows a little bit colder, while the highlights are a little bit warmer, right? So you get that balance between shadow and light. So I will go for highlights, and you never do it excessively. You'd never, kind of give it like insane color, like insane value, like red, red and yellow, really warm. You don't do that. Instead, you always, like these values here that you can see in the top that are changing, you always work around somewhere between 0 and 10, never more. Personally, I prefer working in between 0 and 5, just to have that subtle shift between colors. So here for the red, I will bump it down until it's plus 5. And for the yellow, I will, and keep in mind that I'm in the highlights section, right? So I'm making it warmer. So I'm bumping everything towards red and towards yellow. And for the yellow, I will say -5, right? +5, -5. So this is before, this is after, right? Virtually no change, but it does make a difference, trust me. Just trust me. Then for shadows, let's make them a little bit colder, right? So I will bump it a little bit towards cyan and a little bit towards blue. Again, before, after, before, after. Not much has changed. Actually, I think we can go a little bit heavier on this. Let's go for 10. Plus 10, minus 10. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so in this case, I do use 10, values of 10 for the highlights. And for the midtones, maybe I want it to be a little bit warmer, so I'll also go plus 10, minus 10 for, towards red and yellow. So now this is how it looks like. Okay, hit OK. That's it. We have done it for our camera. Now let's do it for the lenses. So the lenses need to be color matched, of course. And I will just hide the full extension layer, and I'll just work with the extension midway layer here. So I'll go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and let's mess around with the levels a bit. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm still in the body layer, so make sure that you're in the correct layer. And for this, I will probably bump up the opacity to full opacity. So let's go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and let's look at what we have here. So here it's a much more balanced image, right? So we do have pixels that are closer to the in the bright spectrum, right? And that's from the lens. So I'll just move the white just a tiny bit, and I'll move the midtones also just a tiny bit, like that, and maybe increase the contrast here to make it pop a bit more. So we have that. And then I will go to Image, Adjustments, let's go for Hue Saturation, find that color. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe something like that. Bump down the saturation a bit. Looks about right. Okay. Unfortunately, noise, in regards to noise, there's not a lot of things that we can do with the noise. We can go to Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise tool here. And we can just check what it's going to do. Don't preview. Yeah, it does nothing. Let's see. Strength, maximum strength. Preserve details, do not. Reduce color noise. Yes, all of them. Sharpen details, do not. No. Preserve details, even less. Don't preserve any details. No strength. Oh, wait. Did something. Okay, so it's tiny better. So what if we preserve a little bit of, yeah, even if we try to preserve even a tiny fraction of details, the noise comes back. So unfortunately, we will need to deal with the noise as it is. Whatever. So let me go to Image Adjustments, Color Balance, and do the whole shebang. So midtones need to be warmer. Highlights need to be warmer. Oh, that's a little bit too much. And shadows need to be colder. Yeah, color-wise, I think these are close enough. It's a little bit too blue, but that's fine. And same thing for the final extension. Oh yeah, and this guy needs to have the opacity of 50. Maybe we can get away with 66 now. Yeah. Final extension, Image Adjustments, Color Balance. Oh, sorry, Image, just Control L for levels. So this guy needs to, let's just do that, and just bump it up here. Seems to be okay. Oh, no, not like that. Actually, let me turn on the opacity or rather turn the opacity to 100 and try again. Always very hard to see what's going on with low opacity. Something like that. Just at the edge of burning out. Okay, so that, Control U for hue saturation controls. 130, somewhere around 130 if I remember correctly. No, that's an ugly color. That's fine. 120 it is, and then reduce the saturation. Hit OK. That's fine. And then Control B. Yeah, Control B for color balance. Midtones are warmer. Highlights are warmer. Shadows are colder. And we decrease 66%. This to 66, or actually this one can be 50 because it's pretty ugly. And we have our camera. There's one last thing. Not one. There's many last things that I need to show. For instance, if you want to add, the nicer lens on this, you can by just, also cutting it away, kind of placing it correctly and so on. I actually need to do this just to show you properly the way it works. So I will be cutting away the lens from here. I know, I'm not being precise, but this tutorial is taking too long. Okay, so Control C, and let's find the file. Control V, this is a big boy. Let me drag the lens on top. And now I basically Control T to transform, and I need to place it properly, on the extended lens, but I can't. And I can't do that because the proportion, the twisting and bending is not correct. So the way we can do it is by using not just regular Control T, but after you use Control T, you right click inside of the box and you choose to warp. Or there's more options there, but I always prefer to use, wait, is it distort or warp? Yeah, distort, sorry. So you choose to distort rather than just scale or free transform. So these are like scaling options. And when you do distort, you can kind of fit the image a little bit more closely to the perspective of your reference. Like that. Something like this. Something like that. Okay, enter. So we have this going on, then I will of course increase the levels here. Something like this maybe. Much more detail in here, but also, yeah, notice how if you use distort, the whole thing distorts and the lens is not, correctly placed anymore. Maybe that was a bad idea. Okay, that was a bad idea. Let's not do that. But at least now you know how to distort stuff. And a better example would be probably with the body of this camera. So Control T for the body, right click, distort, and I can mess around with it any way I want, right? So I can make it very weird. I will not be doing that. So, okay. There is the magic wand tool. The way magic wand tool works is if you click on some color, it will select pixels next to it which have the same color. So here it selects like 4 pixels. That's because my image is noisy. And we can deal with how many pixels, or rather how accurate it is, how many pixels it will select by changing the tolerance, right? So if our tolerance is 100 and I click, you can see how much stuff it selects. Let me click on the body, for instance here. Let me click on the, on this number here. Book. Just selects the whole number, right? Or the M, letter M, and then I can kind of brush on it. And one of the letters is pink now. So Magic Wand tool is one of the automatic selection tools, but it has its limitations. And you constantly work with tolerance to kind of dial in what it selects and what it doesn't, right? So it's one of those tools that guess what you want to select. Then you have cropping tool. Personally, I never use it, but cropping just changes the size of the file itself, right? Don't use it. I don't know. I don't use it. Frame tool. That's whatever. It's a helper. It's a helper tool that you rarely use. Then you have eyedropper tool, which is quite useful. If you, for instance, need this precise color, right, on this precise pixel, then you can use the eyedropper tool and your active color now changes to it. And now you can use the brush to draw with that color. So that's nice. Then you have the spot healing brush tool, which is... Okay, we are getting into that dangerous area where it's just cute, small tools which are not, they're very niche in their use. And usually I suggest for the students that when you need something, when you arrive at a certain problem, then you find the correct tool that will fix that problem. So spot healing brush tool is one of those tools that will not... that is not general at all, right? In the way it works, it's not for all purposes. So I will not be covering it. Then we have the brush tool. So for the brush tool, it works. I already talked about the eraser tool. Brush tool works in the same way. Let's make a shadow. So I'm just creating a new layer, and I will just grab like a dark color and just make a shadow here. That's good enough. So that's the brush tool. And if I want to actually create a shadow that's a bit softer, I turn down the hardness for this and kind of, do the shadow. Right. Then you have the clone stamp tool, again, niche thing. History brush tool, very niche thing. Eraser tool. Gradient tool is kind of nice because let me create a new layer. You can create gradients like so, right? Or you can, so it's basically just click and drag and you create a gradient. It's kind of nice. Not always useful, but sometimes useful. Actually, let me try doing something like, what if we have something there, and I don't know, I will change the color to white and maybe add, so these are like the gradient types, and here I always, here when you click on that gradient icon, you have like different presets for gradients. So I always go for basics, and I always say that it needs to go from color A to nothing, to transparent, because that's how I work with gradients, but you can choose whichever one you want. So from white to transparent, And then this is just linear gradient. Maybe we can change this to spot gradient just to make it pop a bit more. That one's not nice. Let's see. That's better, but could be better. Yeah, there we go. So that's good enough. Now the focus is a little bit more on the freaking lamp thing, not lamp, iris of the camera lens. Lamp. This is too intense, so let me change the opacity to something more like a little bit more natural for the background. Okay, what's next? Next we have shapes, which we don't care about. Is this shapes? No, this is sharpen tool. Okay, so if something's blurry, for instance here, like stuff is blurry, let me find the correct layer, and you have the sharpen tool, which is also like a brush. You can kind of try to sharpen up the blurry parts. It's going to introduce noise, but it's also going to sharpen stuff up. You know, kind of cool, I guess. Rarely use it. Then you have dodge tool. Dodge tool basically brightens up parts of the image. So, see? Just brightened that part up by just, it also works like a brush. So let me undo that. I don't like dodge tool at all. Then you have pen tool, which is used to draw lines. We don't care about that. We will use Illustrator for that. You have text tool, so I can just write here with a different color. So when you do text tool, all of your settings are again in the top. All of the settings of the tools are in the top. And here you can change from Arial to something else, but I'll keep it as Arial. I'll just change the size to 72, and I'll change the color to a wonderful, let's say black color. And I'll call this my cool camera. My cool camera. And I'll just move it with the move tool. I'll just move it down here. Looks horrible, I know, like this text is bad, but you can easily make it smaller and so on. So for instance, right now I have this text written, right? And in layers, it's still being recognized as text, meaning that if I grab the text tool again, I can come back to it, like just click on it, and I can edit it. My coolest camera, right? And I can change its color as well. If I first need to select it all, so Control A to select the text, and I just change the color of it to, let's say, gray, and then hit escape, to finish the tool. One important thing is that I can't do certain things with it as long as it's, an editable text tool, editable text type. So I might want to change it to a raster image, like every other layer, like a regular layer. So what I do is I right-click again on the name of my layer, and I choose rasterize type. And it becomes just a regular layer, which I can, transform, mess around with. I can even distort it, make it like that. We don't want to make it like that, so we'll keep it like this. I can rotate it and so on, right? So actually, do I want to rotate it? Sure, I'll rotate it. My coolest camera. And I also can add some effects to it. There's a bunch of effects. All of them are shitty, except one. And that effect is called stroke. So when I have my text layer selected, I can come here to the bottom where it says FX, effects, right? FX, and I can choose stroke. right? Choose stroke. And then this menu pops up where I can change the size of the stroke. So I'll say something like this, 9. And I can change the opacity, of course, and I can change the color, right? So you get an outline around your, layer. Around every pixel in your layer gets an outline. So here I'll just change this to white, I think, or maybe black. Yeah, let's go for black. Okay, like that. Opacity, that's fine. Sure. It okay? That's it. And now you can see that this layer has an effect that is stroke, and I can turn it on or off, like I can enable or disable its preview. So that's cool. I don't like where, that's the shadow. I don't like where this text is, so I will move it. That's not my, why do you not let me move my, there we go. Right here. Like so, maybe something like that. And I'll change this back, I'll change the opacity of it to something like 18, maybe less, 12. Just, regular, my coolest camera thing. Right. What else do I show you? Okay, so the shadow. Let's fix the shadow. It's very ugly. So the way the shadow that this guy works is it's right now too intense, I think, and also it has a few issues here and there. So I'll just grab my trusted eraser tool and just kind of mess around with it a bit until it's a little bit more until it behaves a bit more. Why can't I undo? Less opacity. Less opacity means that you need to kind of brush it more times, but it introduces more control, right? So let's see here, like that, maybe. That's too much. Like that, and then here it could be just that, and we don't want to see anything here. Yeah, that's good. And here, like that white spots, those white spots are obnoxious. So let me get rid of them by actually let's use eraser for all of our problems. So I'll just kind of delete them casually. So I slightly kind of deleted them. And also I will use the last tool, which is called the burn tool, right? So the burn tool is, or rather no, burn tool is kind of obnoxious. Let's use something else. And I will show you a nice little trick. So where I have my body layer, I will make a copy of it, right? So I'll just make a copy, body copy, right? So we have now two layers that are on the same, at the same place, at the same time. And one last thing that I want to show you is this blending, this drop-down box here. So this applies to any layer that's being currently selected, and this is called blending options of a layer. So here it's normal, where it's just your regular body of a camera, but here I can choose dissolve blending type, or darken, or let's just go through them: multiply, color burn, linear burn, lighten, screen, color dodge. So these are different ways of how you can blend two layers which are on top of each other together, right? I will not be going through all of these blending options, right? Because it's too much, I think, for beginners. But just note that multiply and screen are usually the ones that you want to use. For instance, I can just give you a really quick example. Let me find something like a duck, right? Let me find a duck, and the duck needs to be... No, duck is a very bad example, but it still might work. So let's say this guy. I'll copy the image of a duck and paste it here. By the way, you can do it that way as well. You can just copy and paste, right? An image of a duck. And here, for this particular duck, I can choose multiply option, and you can't really see it, right? So normal image of it is like that, and multiply is like that. Cool, huh? So what multiply does, it says that the brighter a pixel is in an image, the more transparent it's going to become, right? So what happens is that everything that was white, in this case the background of the duck, will become transparent. There's a trade-off. The duck is going to be transparent as well. So, it doesn't... you can't put it on dark backgrounds. But, it kind of works. It's kind of cool. So that's multiply. If you... And screen is basically an inverse of multiply, like a reverse of multiply. Everything that is dark is going to become transparent. Right? So now the duck itself is transparent. I can actually do an example here. The saturate, Control L. Oops, that's too much. Like that. Like that. Okay. So we have, this kind of situation going on here. If I do multiply, the white is gone, right? It's just the outline of the duck. If I do screen, the black is gone. It's just the background of the duck. So those are quite useful. So the way I use layer blending here is I just take I make a copy of this body of a camera, and I place it on top of the original, and I choose multiply so that it darkens everything. So everything that was white is going to be transparent, but everything that was black is going to be added, on top of what's already black. So everything that was dark will be darkened even further. And then I will take my trusted eraser tool, this time around with opacity of 100. And it can be pretty high, pretty big. And I will brush with that eraser tool here and there until it kind of looks nice. So that's fine. Basically, what I'm trying to... Oops. Didn't need to do that. What I'm trying to do here is increase the contrast in the bottom portion so that the shadow doesn't look that awkward. I should stop because it's right now I'm just polishing everything. So this is one of the images, right? One of the images that I would do for this particular object, showing the extension, right? Another set or another image would be me messing around with how the cap is removed from the lens, because here you can see I haven't used so many pictures, right? So it's not like you need to, you just do one picture and you're done. No, it depends on how many aspects you found interesting about the object, how many aspects were dynamic within the object, and thus you kind of choose which ones to showcase in different images. If you can showcase all of them in one image, yeah, go ahead, sure. Sure, that's fine. That's great even. But if you need to do like 2 photoshopped images, do 2 photoshopped images. It's up to you. It's your project, and the better you do it, the better it will look, I guess, in your portfolio, right? So it's absolutely up to you, the amount of effort that you put in. Let's do one last thing, and then we will save or rather, is there anything that I want to show you before we finish? I showed you colors, I showed you that, zoom in, panning. So the way by the way, when you're heavily zoomed in, right, and you want to kind of move the view, you can do that by either clicking in the top right corner of the screen, here where you have the navigator, and dragging that window around. That's one way. You can also use, or you can also use these not scroll wheels, but yeah, you can use the scroll wheel to actually kind of go up and down, and I believe it's control scroll wheel to go left and right, or just clicking and dragging these scrolly things here and here. Where's my gray color in the letters? Hello? Okay, let's try multiply. Yeah, there we go. Now it's a little bit darker. That's good. The coolest camera. Okay, let's save the file, and we will move on to, or rather you will move on to the Illustrator part, which is going to be taken care of my colleague, Ellen. So let's save the file. So file, save. So you have your Photoshop file saved, but you might want a regular image file, which is a JPEG type of image. So you just go to File, Save As again, and you just say AADA01, let's say JPEG, and you just kind of click the drop-down list, and you choose JPEG. Click that, hit Save. It will ask you about the quality of how much do you want to compress it. I never go for quality of 12. That's a little bit overkill. I always go somewhere between 10 and 11. Right? It's still considered maximum quality, but yeah. So these are the settings that I use. I hit OK. Now if I minimize this, that's a duck, and kind of move this one here and take a look here. So here I have my Photoshop file, and here I have my JPEG file. So JPEG file doesn't have any layer information associated with it, but it can be uploaded to, Facebook, Instagram, and also can be sent to print. So let me just open it up to take a look. I would spend more time cleaning up that edge for sure. That edge is really ugly. The bottom edge is also pretty bad, but it is what it is. For this tutorial, I think this is, for this introduction type of a tutorial, I think this is good enough. All right, so we are done with this portion, and I will leave you to Ellen. See ya.